life and death of Jesus was one act of perfect obedience. And therefore, we can say then that it was the supreme sacrifice. It was the perfect sacrifice. And I don't know about you, but perfection cannot be improved. Perfection means that it is perfect. Cannot improve upon it. And so the sacrifice of Jesus cannot and need not ever be made again. Now, in John chapter 10, you don't have to turn there. I just made a note, put it in the outline. I want to read that because it goes right along with what I'm talking about here. Jesus said in John chapter 10, verse 17 and 18, "Therefore doth my Father love me, because I laid down my life, that I might take it again. No man takes it from me, but I lay it down myself. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it again. This command have I received of my Father." And so the first thing that we see here is that it was Jesus' choice. He offered Himself to be the sacrifice for our sins. You know, if you watch the Discovery Channel or National Geographic or one of those television shows there, especially around Easter, they like to show their documentaries about Jesus, the face of Jesus. Somebody's talking to somebody about the Shroud of Turin and all of those. And there was one that caught my attention the other day because it was titled, "Who Really Killed Jesus?" And I watched it for just a few moments because it was interesting, Brother Terry. You know, they started out and they talked about that maybe we could blame the Romans, that it was the Roman government to say that they were the ones that killed Jesus. And then they went to the Jews and that group of people, and they said, well, it was the Jews and it was the religious leaders. They are the ones that should be held responsible for killing Jesus. Well, friend, let me just say this morning, none of them really killed Jesus, because Jesus laid down His life. Why? Because He loves us. He had to sacrifice Himself so that we, through faith, might live with Him. I think about a song, Brother Bible, I don't know if you know this or not, it's kind of an old, I don't know the name of it or anything. I think it's just called this. He could have called 10,000 angels, but He chose to die for you and me. How true is that? It was a voluntary sacrifice. He gave His life for you and me. It was my sins, though, that nailed Him to the cross. Think about that. I didn't really kill Jesus, but it was my sins that nailed Him to the cross. You say, well, you weren't there 2,000 years ago. Yes, that's true. But it's as if today I am holding that hammer in my hand, and it is my sins that is pounding the nail into the cross. Now, why do you say that He would do that? Why would Jesus suffer on a cross? Well, John 3:16. "For God so loved the world, that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life." Jesus was both the priest and the sacrifice. He offered Himself up voluntarily for the sins of you and I, to compensate them, to make reconciliation and satisfaction for them. And this He offered to God, against whom they had sinned, and whose justice may be satisfied. Not only was it a voluntary sacrifice, but it was also a vicarious sacrifice. And if you know what vicarious means, I don't see any hands, don't feel bad, I didn't either, okay? Every now and then I get one of these outlines, you get one of these, Brother Terry, you come across a word, you have no idea what it means, right, okay? Don't feel bad, I didn't know either, I had to look it up in the dictionary, alright? It was a voluntary sacrifice, and it was a vicarious sacrifice. In other words, it was a substitutionary sacrifice, alright? So I have no idea what substitutionary means, okay? In other words, listen, Christ died in my place. Substitution. You know, on Wednesday nights, a couple of Wednesday nights ago, we're working through the Baptist doctrine, the Baptist faith and message. And I gave 3 words on a Wednesday night. And I can't even hardly pronounce the first one. And I'm going to say it again here in a little while. Propitiation, atonement, and substitutionary. And I said, I want you to think about those 3 words because we're going to talk about them all in a few weeks. And so here we are. Listen to me, church. He died for you and me. He died for us. But listen, it should have been me on that cross. Because it was my sins. It should be me paying the penalty for my sins. I read it earlier, but I want to read it again. Because this is the whole point I'm really trying to make right now. Romans chapter 5, verse 8. But God demonstrated His love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. See, let's break that verse down for just a minute. His love toward who? Toward us. That is, in other words, He manifested it. He made it known. Because, in other words, we can say it was hid in His heart. He had to show, He had to prove His love some way toward us. He has so confirmed it by this instance. He has given us clear evidence so that there is no room for reason or to doubt it. He has illustrated it, and He has set it off by this example. And then it said there, Christ died for us. That is a statement of the grandest truth. It being the glory of humanity that Christ would die to save me. At the same time, this truth is the marvel of God that He would do such a thing in order to accomplish redemption. He took my place. He took your place. And by dying Himself on the cross, He saved us from dying eternally in hell. Listen to me. He had to die so that I could live. He had to die so that I could live. I want you to turn over to 1 Peter. Or, well, you don't have to turn over to 1 Peter. I want to make a few references here. You have them there on the notes page. I want you to listen to 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 24. 1 Peter 2:24 says, He Himself bore our sins in His own body on the tree. Did you catch that? What Christ bore were sins. Whose sins? Our sins. He bore our sins in His own body on that tree. Every sort of sin that your mind can imagine, those were the sins that He bore upon Himself on that cross. It all belonged to Him then. Every act of sin from humanity and all that is in sin, everything that belongs to it, that arises from it, the filth, the guilt, and the punishment, and the multitude of sins did He bear. Even all the iniquities or the sins of the elect. His bearing was in this manner. He became the substitute, or in other words, the vicarious sacrifice. He became the substitute of His people. Their sins were laid upon Him by His Father. That is, in other words, they were imputed to Him. They were put into His account. He voluntarily took them upon Himself. And as one may take the debt of another and make himself answerable for it, the debt has been paid. Paid in full. I believe there's a song that says, Jesus paid it all, and all to Him I owe. Now listen to 1 John 4:10. Because again, you may be sitting there this morning, and you may be thinking, I just can't understand. Why would someone leave heaven and come to this earth to suffer and die upon a cross? I just can't understand that. Well, listen to 1 John 4:10. In this is love.